There's a place on Earth where in the summer, stones heat up so much that you can cook food on them, and 6 months later, those same stones are covered with a layer of ice and buried in snow at temperatures of -40. This isn't a mistake in a geography textbook or a glitch in the Matrix. This is the Gobi, a desert that exists by its own rules and disregards all your ideas about how a desert should look. Forget about camels against the backdrop of sand dunes. Forget about endless waves of golden sand. Here, there's nothing resembling the Sahara or Arabia. The Gobi is a cold desert of the continental type, elevated between 900 and 1,500 meters above sea level. It stretches over 1,300,000 square kilometers between southern Mongolia and northern China, and the sandy dunes you might have imagined occupy only 5% of its territory. The rest consists of vast gravel plains, rocky outcrops, salt flats, and rare oases scattered hundreds of kilometers apart. By the way, hello. If you're here for the first time, on this channel, we explore things that change the way we see the world. Subscribe and stick around until the end, because by the third part of this video, you'll be looking at deserts with completely different eyes. And if you're already with us, thanks for staying. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and give a like. So, why is the Gobi like this? Why is it so dry here when there's a whole ocean nearby? The answer is called rain shadow, and it's a beautiful example of how geography works as a mechanism. The Himalayas and the Tibetan Plateau, these giant mountain systems to the south, intercept all the moisture carried by winds from the Indian Ocean. Clouds rise up the slopes, cool down, and drop rain on the southern side, and they have no chance of crossing over the mountains. Meanwhile, from the north, Siberian anticyclones crash down on the Gobi, masses of dry, icy air that turn the desert into a freezer in winter. The result, there are years when no rain falls here at all. In good years, up to 100 millimeters of precipitation accumulates, and that's considered a lot. And the temperature difference in a single day can jump by 35 degrees. In the morning, you put on a jacket. By noon, you take off your shirt, and by evening, you're cold again. And in these conditions, in this place where it seems impossible to survive, lies one of the greatest graveyards of the ancient world, not of people, but of creatures that roamed the planet long before us. 1922. American explorer Roy Chapman Andrews leads an expedition from the American Museum of Natural History across the Mongolian desert. He finds a spot with bright red rocks, which he names the Flaming Cliffs, today known as Bayan Zag. And there, in those cliffs, his team discovers something that science had never seen before: the first dinosaur nests with eggs in history. Before this discovery, scientists debated how dinosaurs reproduced. After it, the question was settled. Dinosaurs laid eggs, and the Gobi provided the first physical evidence of this. Over 100 years of research after Andrews' expedition, more than 80 genera of dinosaurs have been found in the Gobi, and over 60 major paleontological sites have been uncovered. Here, they unearthed the fossilized duel between a velociraptor and a protoceratops, two creatures frozen in the moment of combat forever. In 1993, a fossil of an oviraptor was found, which was perched over a clutch of eggs in a brooding position, just like modern birds do. This was yet another confirmation of the connection between dinosaurs and birds, and it came straight from the Gobi. But here's what really matters. The Gobi isn't a museum. It's not a place where everything interesting happened millions of years ago and has since remained a dead weight. This desert right now, at this very moment, supports the life of 49 species of mammals, 15 species of reptiles, over 160 species of birds, and more than 400 species of plants. And each of these species is an engineering marvel of adaptation, honed over millennia of evolution in conditions where a mistake equals death. Let's start with without which nothing would exist here, the plants. And the main character among them is the saxaul. This tree gave its name to Bayanzag itself, which translates to rich in saxaul. The saxaul looks unremarkable, gnarled, short, with thin branches that are hard to even call leafy. But what's happening underground is true engineering for survival. The root system of the saxaul goes down to depths several times greater than the height of the tree itself, reaching groundwater inaccessible to everything else. Its wood is so dense that it sinks in water. Try to digest that fact. A tree that sinks. And it burns almost without smoke, making it the only fuel for nomads in the desert for centuries. But the most important role of the saxaul is ecological. Its thickets act like an anchor. They stabilize shifting sands, preventing the desert from spreading. Under the canopies of the saxaul, a microclimate is created: shade, lowered temperatures, moisture retention. It's not just a tree, it's the foundation on which everything else stands. Next to it grow cold wormwood, feather grass, wild onions, and rhubarb, all demonstrating a set of survival techniques that botanists call xerophytic traits: tiny leaves with minimal evaporation surface area, waxy coatings on the surface, and powerful root systems that draw water from deep below. The soil of the Gobi is gray-brown, rich in minerals, laced with crystals of gypsum and halite. It looks lifeless, but this mineral cocktail creates a unique soil ecology where these tough, stubborn plants have found a way to cling on. And without this plant foundation, without saxaul, wormwood, and feather grass, no animal would survive in the Gobi, not a single one. Remember this thought, because in the second part, we'll start climbing up the food chain, from tiny creatures that have never taken a sip of water in their lives to the rarest bear on the planet, of which only about 30 remain on Earth. And each of these animals is connected to the saxaul, to the wormwood, to this gray-brown soil, threads that we are just beginning to unravel. Let's start at the very bottom of the food chain, because that's where the true architects of the Gobi hide, those without whom this entire vast system would collapse like a house of cards: jerboas. Small-eared, with disproportionately long hind legs, they look like nature pieced them together from spare parts left over after creating normal animals. But behind this comical appearance lies one of the most sophisticated survival machines in the desert. Gobi jerboas never take a sip of water in their lives. Not at all. They get all their moisture from food, from seeds, roots, and insects. Their kidneys work so efficiently that they produce extremely concentrated urine, squeezing every drop from their bodies to the last. And they don't just survive, they actively build. Their burrows can go down to 2 meters deep and turn into entire underground cities, which are later inhabited by lizards, insects, and other small dwellers. Additionally, jerboas disperse plant seeds across the desert, unknowingly launching new growth points where nothing would sprout without them. Living alongside them is the Daurian pika, a creature the size of a fist that inhabits rocky outcrops in colonies and does something that brings a warm, human-like feeling. In summer, pikas gather grass and lay it out to dry on rocks, creating hay reserves for winter. A little farmer in the middle of the desert, stockpiling feed in advance because he knows winter in the Gobi doesn't forgive those who aren't prepared. And there's also the Roborovsky hamster, the smallest hamster in the world, weighing about 20 grams and fitting in a child's palm. Yet, it doesn't hibernate even in the harshest frosts, when temperatures drop so low that the air seems to ring with cold. All these tiny creatures, jerboas, pikas, hamsters, are not just cute critters for calendars. This is the food base, the foundation on which the entire predatory top of the ecosystem relies. Without them, there would be no mammals, no foxes, and no eagles. But let's rise higher and talk about those who truly redefine what's possible. The kulan is a Mongolian wild ass. Muscular and resilient, with sandy fur that blends into the gravel plains, it can be hard to spot even from 200 meters away. The Mongolian Gobi supports the largest population of kulans in the world, around 91,000 individuals, which is over 84% of all kulans on the planet. They are among the most widely ranging terrestrial mammals. The annual range of one herd can cover up to 70,000 square kilometers. They travel thousands of kilometers in just a few weeks, moving between watering holes and pastures along routes established over generations. And just recently, this year, something unexpected happened. Kulans returned to eastern Mongolia after 65 years of absence. They crossed a railway barrier that had blocked their migration for decades. This isn't a pretty legend, it's a documented fact, proving that if we restore landscape connectivity for animals, they will return on their own. Now, let's talk about the Mazalai. We need to pause here because this might be the most incredible story in the entire video. The Mazalai is the Gobi brown bear, the only bear in the world that lives exclusively in the desert, not in the forest, not in the tundra, not by a river with salmon, in the desert. According to genetic studies, its population is around 31 individuals. 31. For the entire planet. There are no Mazalai in zoos, none in captivity. They all inhabit 3 oasis complexes within the Great Gobi National Park, tied to water sources without which they would perish. Over the last 50 years, their range has shrunk by more than half. They eat wild rhubarb, shoots of wormwood, roots of desert plants, and wild onions. Their diet is almost entirely plant-based, with insects added in the summer. Unlike their forest relatives, Mazalai do not enter true hibernation. They go into a state of torpor from October to March, digging shallow dens and lining them with dry grass. In 2013, the president of Mongolia declared the Year of the Mazalai and proclaimed it a national treasure. For the first time in history, any state issued such a decree for a bear. Next is the wild Bactrian camel, and this is not the camel you've seen in a zoo or in pictures. It's a separate biological species that diverged genetically from the domestic camel about 110,000 years ago. There are only about 1,000 left on the planet, roughly 600 in China and around 450 in Mongolia. The International Union for Conservation of Nature predicts an 80% decline in their population over the next 40 to 50 years. But this camel can do something that no other mammal on Earth can do. It drinks water that is saltier than seawater. It has slit-like nostrils that close during sandstorms, a double row of eyelashes to protect its eyes, ears covered with fur on the inside, and tough split soles with a horn layer that allows it to walk on scorching stones. In winter, it eats snow to obtain moisture. And finally, the Przewalski's horse, or Taki in Mongolian, the last true wild horse that has never been domesticated. In the 60s of the 20th century, it completely went extinct in the wild. All Taki that exist today are descended from a small group of animals that survived in zoos. The current global population is between 2,000 and 2,500 individuals, and this horse is being returned to the steppes by several countries: Mongolia, China, Kazakhstan, Russia, Spain, and Hungary. In June of last year, 6 Przewalski's horses were released into the steppes of Kazakhstan. For the first time in over 200 years, Taki returned to Kazakh lands. The population in China has already exceeded 900 individuals. This is one of the most successful species recovery stories in history, from a handful of zoo animals to thousands of free horses in 3 decades. Over all of them, predators soar. The snow leopard. In Mongolia, there are between 700 and 1,000 individuals, making it the second largest population in the world. The territory of one leopard can cover up to 1,600 square kilometers, and its main prey consists of mountain goats and argiles, which make up to 70% of its diet. The Gobi wolf, lighter and paler than its northern relatives, a collective hunter of the plains that acts as a sanitation worker for the ecosystem. The mammal, one of the oldest lines of felids, having diverged around 12 million years ago, with fur of record density, up to 9,000 hairs per square centimeter, a specialist in hunting pika, the corsac, a small steppe fox. The steppe polecat, a little-known marbled ferret, a master of camouflage among the rocks. And in the sky, the golden eagle, with a wingspan of up to 2 meters 30 centimeters, capable of diving at speeds of up to 320 kilometers per hour and spotting prey from several kilometers away. Among the Kazakhs of Mongolia, the ancient tradition of hunting with golden eagles, berkuchi, still thrives, one of the oldest partnerships between humans and birds of prey, recognized by UNESCO as an intangible cultural heritage. Nearby flies the sacha, a bird whose males soak their belly feathers in water, absorbing it like a sponge, and fly 50 to 100 kilometers to the nest so that the chicks can suck the water from the feathers. Nomads have used sacha for centuries as a living indicator of water sources. Wherever the sacha flies, there's water. And at the very bottom of this pyramid, under everyone's feet, dung beetles, which have learned to collect morning dew in a way that engineers around the world are now copying. The beetle raises its rear end, and the condensate flows down the grooves of its shell right into its mouth. This mechanism is being studied for creating water collection systems in arid regions. Agamas change color to regulate their body temperature. Sand boas hunt by sensing vibrations beneath the surface of the sand. Scorpions can slow their metabolism to nearly zero and fast for months. All this life, from beetles to golden eagles, from scorpions to snow leopards, is interconnected in a single network where every thread is taut. Without insects, there would be no lizards. Without lizards, there would be no owls. Without owls, no one controls the rodent population. Without rodents, no one disperses seeds. Without seeds, there would be no saxel. Without saxel, the sands would shift. And soon the desert would cease to be alive. But who and what threatens this network right now? And is there a chance to preserve it? That's what we'll discuss in the third part. Everything we've talked about so far, saxol, jerboas, mazalai, wild camels, Przewalski's horses, golden eagles, all of this exists right now. But here's what's important to understand. All of this exists on a delicate edge, and that edge is getting thinner every year. The first threat is climate, and it's not about abstract global warming that's discussed at conferences. It's about specific water sources in specific oases, which 30 or so mazalai depend on. In dry years, these sources dry up completely. They don't just shrink or diminish, they disappear. And the mazalai is tied to water. It can't wander hundreds of kilometers in search of a new stream because the desert between oases offers no food or shelter. When a source dries up, the bear finds itself trapped. And such years are becoming more frequent. The second threat is mining. Mongolia is rich in copper, gold, and coal, and large-scale extraction of these resources is one of the main sectors of the country's economy. The problem is that mines consume groundwater from reserves that are already on the brink of depletion. The very water that the saxol reaches for with its roots, the same water that nourishes the oases for the mazalai, the same water that wild camels come to. And the roads built for heavy trucks cut through the migration routes of kulan and gazelle, severing paths these animals have used for thousands of years. The third threat is fences. It sounds almost absurd, but fences along railways and national borders literally slice animal habitats into isolated fragments. A herd that has traveled the same route for decades encounters wire and can't go any further. Genetic exchange between populations stops, groups shrink, become more vulnerable, and lose resilience to diseases and droughts. The fourth threat specifically concerns wild camels, hybridization. Domestic camels breed with wild ones, and each such crossbreeding dilutes the genetic pool that has developed through separate evolution over more than 1 million years. This isn't just a loss of breed purity, it's a loss of unique adaptations that allow wild camels to drink water saltier than the sea and survive where their domestic counterparts would perish. And the fifth threat, which few people consider, is cashmere. Mongolia is the second largest producer of cashmere in the world, and global demand for this material grows every year. The higher the demand, the more cashmere goats there are, and the greater the strain on pastures. Goats graze grass down to the roots. Vast meadows degrade, turning into bare earth, leaving wild-hoofed animals, kulan and gazelle, without food. Every time someone on the other side of the planet buys a cashmere sweater, a small part of the Gobi loses another patch of greenery. The connection may not be obvious, but it's very real. Poaching finishes off what the other threats haven't. It affects nearly all key species, from snow leopards to wild camels. And at this point, one could end on a grim note, say something heavy, and ride off into the sunset. But that would be unfair, because things are happening in the Gobi that provide real, data-backed reasons for hope. The Great Gobi Biosphere Reserve is one of the largest protected areas in all of Asia. Its Zone A covers more than 4,400,000 hectares and is entirely dedicated to protecting desert fauna. Within this area operates the Gobi Bear Project, a team that has set up feeding stations with supplements for mazalai and installed cameras to identify each bear individually. And there are results. According to the Institute of General and Experimental Biology at the Mongolian Academy of Sciences, by 2022, the mazalai population exceeded 50 individuals for the first time, up from 36 at the end of 2018. For a species teetering on the brink, the increase from 36 to 50 isn't just statistics. It's the difference between extinction and a chance for survival. The Przewalski's horse is a model story for global conservation. From a handful of zoo animals, literally the last survivors behind bars, the population has grown to 2,500 individuals living freely in the steppes of 5 countries over 3 decades. The Chinese breeding center in Xinjiang, the largest in Asia, has raised more than 800 horses and released 146 into the wild. Last year, Kazakhstan returned the taki to its steppes for the first time in over 200 years. When someone says that saving endangered species is pointless and that it's money down the drain, show them a Przewalski's horse. The return of Kulan to eastern Mongolia this year after 65 years of absence is further proof that restoring landscape connectivity works. Remove the barrier, return the corridor, and the animals will come back on their own. Not in 100 years, not in 50. Right now, international organizations, WCS, WWF, UN programs, are working with local herders to develop ecotourism and compensation programs. A herder who once might have shot a snow leopard for a sheep now receives compensation for livestock loss and income from tourists coming to see that leopard alive. This isn't charity, it's an economy that makes a living predator more valuable than a dead one. And it's changing people's attitudes toward wildlife not through lectures and posters, but through their wallets, which is more reliable than any propaganda. Now, let's pull everything together and look at the bigger picture, because the main meaning lies in the whole. Saxol stabilizes the sand. The jerboa spreads its seeds and digs burrows. Lizards hide in the jerboa's burrows. The mammal catches the lizards. The roots of Saxol are dug up by mazalai, loosening the soil. New plants sprout in the loose soil. Kulan and wild camels feed on these plants. Camels carry seeds for tens of kilometers through the emptiness between oases. Wolves cull weakened hoofed animals, preventing diseases from spreading through the herd. The remains of their prey go to Corsairs and vultures. The droppings of all animals nourish dung beetles. Beetles feed agamas. Agamas feed owls. Each link supports the next. Every thread is taut. 31 Mazzali isn't just a number for the Red Book. It's 31 living indicators that there's still water in the desert, still roots, and balance is maintained. 1,000 wild camels represent 1,000 connections between oases separated by hundreds of kilometers of emptiness, 1,000 couriers carrying seeds and linking isolated islands of life into a single network. 2,000 Przewalski's horses are 2,000 proofs that humans can restore what they once took away. 91,000 Kulin are the last stronghold of a species that once roamed the steppes from China to Ukraine, now surviving only here in the Mongolian Gobi. The Gobi teaches patience. It teaches that life doesn't have to be loud, green, and obvious to be complex, beautiful, and worthy of protection. It teaches that every link in the chain matters, from the beetle collecting dew on its back to the bear loosening the soil by digging up rhubarb roots. Life finds a way. It always has, but only if we don't completely block its path. If this video has changed your perspective on deserts even by 1 degree, like it and share it with someone who might also find it interesting. Subscribe to the channel. There are many more stories worth hearing ahead.